Well, as we head into the second half of this morning's edition of News and Views, this is actually quite a story, and it has actually made international news. And this is about seven Chinese who have been sentenced to 20 years each for human trafficking and forced labor in South Africa. And this is something that we obviously need to be aware of, that it's been happening under our very own noses in the country. And this is the reason why we are joined now by organized crime expert Chad Thomas. Chad, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Very good morning to you and a good morning to the listeners.
Yes, sir. I said this has made international headlines because I've seen this appear in on many international media platforms from right across the entire world in terms of these seven Chinese who have been now sentenced to 20 years. So, obviously human trafficking is seen as a very, very serious crime, right across the entire world. But from what I've just read, a little bit that I've read, employing Malawians under the inhumane conditions, heavily guarded, not allowed communication, all of that, and basically a sweatshop, and some of them very, very young children that have actually been working.
Yeah, it's a horrendous situation, but we need to make a distinction between what we term human slavery, human trafficking, forced labor, and economic refugees. What we're finding a lot of is that people are coming into South Africa looking for a better opportunity. Their countries perhaps are not doing as well as they should have. We see a lot of immigrants coming in specifically from our neighboring countries and countries that neighbor those. So we'll have Zimbabweans, Mozambicans, we'll have a lot of people from Malawi. And they come here for a better future and they get exploited. So exploitation is actually the name of the game here. So we need to make a distinction between the trafficking aspect, the exploitation aspect, the modern slavery aspect, the forced labor aspect. What we found is with trafficking, that's normally for purposes of sex trafficking. We see people are taken from one place to another under false pretenses. We even find South African girls find adverts for modeling or for waitressing jobs overseas. They respond to those ads. They think they're going to work on a cruise ship or somewhere nice. Turns out that they land up in the hands of sex traffickers. We had a very well-known case where South Africans that were wanting to teach English in Thailand went to Thailand and were then trafficked to Myanmar, where they were kept prisoner and forced to work in an environment that was conducive to forced labor and human slavery, where they had to run English-speaking call centers for the Myanmar government. That was a very serious matter. What we see in South Africa is slightly different. We've seen a lot of Ethiopian people come to South Africa and then get held against their will, and their families back home are extorted. They paid to come to South Africa. They were hoping to find jobs in South Africa. They came here as undocumented individuals, and therefore they had no one to speak to. They had no ways to interact or to communicate because they were held hostage, and a lot of them couldn't communicate in English. And we've seen the same with countries like Malawi. People are coming here looking for a better opportunity. They're forced into slave labor on farms. We've had people arrested on farms. They're forced into slave labor in sweatshops such as the one you've mentioned. And it's a horrendous situation. And it's mostly exploitation because a lot of these people were not deliberately trafficked. They came voluntarily looking for opportunities, and it was then that they were taken advantage of. And I think a case like this sends a very clear message that we're not going to allow people of any nationality to exploit people in our country of any nationality. And this is something that those xenophobic people amongst us need to understand. Our constitution respects everybody. It doesn't just respect South Africans. And this was a very clear message from our courts that exploitation of human beings and the trafficking of human beings will not be tolerated on our soil.
Yes, but also, Jed, I think what's important to understand is many of these crimes that we're seeing are imported crimes into this country. It's crimes that we haven't seen before. And, whether we're talking of human trafficking, we know kidnapping is on the rise as well in this country at this point in time. And also, we find that, this country is seen as a land of opportunity, which it is clearly not, because considering where we are economically, and there is they people come from other countries, particularly the poorer countries, seeking those opportunities in these countries, and become vulnerable to these traffickers, or people who just want to exploit people. And this, we're seeing, is quite a major problem, and it's a huge issue in this country, that exploitation. And again, because people are vulnerable, and they are desperate.
You make a very solid point when you say people are coming to our country and problems are being created, and it's not something that we saw in South Africa previously. If you look at the kidnap for ransom syndicates, they moved across from Mozambique into South Africa. Mozambique never had a very successful criminal justice system, and you had kidnap for ransom syndicates operating with impunity. They then decided South Africa would be a great land. It would be the land with the goose that lays the golden egg because of the amount of money. And they moved across virtually unhindered and carried on their practice of kidnap for ransom in South Africa. We see the same playing out with international narcotic syndicates. We have the Serbians here, we have the Israelis here, we have the Russians here. We've even had the cartels from Mexico and Colombia establish a presence in both the Western Cape and Gauteng, and have even fought proxy turf wars. I had two gentlemen in my office about 2 weeks ago from the Ethiopian community, and they were talking about how members of their community were being extorted and kidnapped. And they were being extorted and kidnapped by people from their very own community. And I said, would they do this in Ethiopia? And they said, no. And this is the frightening thing. We've got these turf wars of international crime syndicates taking place on our soil. They would never have the bravado to do it in their own countries. Yet in South Africa, there's something very wrong with our system that gives people the opportunity to do the worst of the worst without fear of retribution. And that's because there's so little accountability or consequence because of the damage that's been done to our criminal justice system.
Yes, and as we're also seeing a similar trend within our own communities. I would say the traditional Indian communities, or the Muslim communities as well, we see many of people of Pakistani nationals origin, being killed, being shot as well, execution style. So these turf wars are also taking place within those communities as well, Chad.
They are, and it's a situation that we as South Africans cannot contend with. It's bad enough that we've got such massive unemployment and such a homegrown issue of criminality, especially violent crime when it comes to GBVF. The fact that we're now importing criminals and allowing these criminals to ride roughshod. You look at the likes of Radovan Krecha, he had police officers under his control that were carrying out hits on his instruction. How did we land up in this situation? We're the most advanced country on the African continent. We've got so much to be proud of. We've come such a long way in the last 3 decades, yet we have an open invitation to international criminals. We desperately need to look at the way in which people come into South Africa, the way in which they are granted asylum or refugee status, and whether they really are coming from areas where their lives are put in danger, or whether they are coming here as economic refugees and are going to take advantage of some of our very lax systems.
Yes, just coming back to the issue we obviously wanted to talk about. I needed your take on these prosecutions that have now taken place, prosecuted for 20 years.
Kudos to the NPA, kudos to the SAPS members, kudos to the Hawks. All the members that were involved in this put together a rock solid case. I'm assuming that it will be appealed. Now, suddenly, there's an acknowledgement from family members of these Chinese that have been convicted that, yes, they were implicated in this particular crime, but that they're not the big bosses. Well, they must give up the big bosses. They must give up the rest. We're tired of seeing the low and middle tier criminals being prosecuted in this country, whether they're South African or foreign. We want to see the top tier leadership prosecuted, because only when that happens will a clear message be sent that South Africa has reached a point of zero tolerance to criminality.
Well, Chad, we're going to have to leave it at that. As always, we do appreciate your time. Thank you very much for that. Have yourself a great day and a great weekend ahead as well.
Thank you.
Chad Thomas joining us this morning. And yes, we are living in a country under very, very difficult times. And again, the point we speak about imported crimes and crimes that we've never ever heard of, experienced in this country before. And these are featuring a lot more. And this is definitely raising concerns. And with that, we're going to go for a break. And we come back, it's fired up with Hafiz Imran Chunara, CEO of Africa Muslims Agency and also Personal Excellence Mentor. And the topic this morning is most people are unpredictable.